Welcome back to All Things Rugby. My name is Shanair, and today we are going to be ranking the teams through the Autumn Nations into our tiers. So our tiers for today are going to be our Grand Slams, our champions, our big heavyweights. Next up, we're going into our playoff contenders, the teams that are thereabouts with a couple of changes they could be competing across the board. Next up, we're going to have our TMO checks, so those teams that they did well, but there's just a few things more that they need to work on. After that, trending topic, we're going to have our sin binners, those that need to go and take 10 minutes out, cool their heads off. And then our last one is going to be our back to the sheds they go. So we're going to be talking about the 12 teams competing in next year's Nations Championship. So stay tuned. Let's start off with Argentina. They had 3 games and 3 very different games. They started off in Wales, which they put on an attacking proper show. I mean, that try they scored from kickoff when Matera broke and then put the kick through was awesome. They still conceded 4 tries to Wales, though. I mean, look, Wales have got better, but Argentina, we'd expect a lot more. In the last year, they've beaten the Lions, they've beaten South Africa, they've beaten the All Blacks. So, we'd like to think that they are better than Wales by a long shot. It was an okay game. Against Scotland, they gave Scotland every chance to win that game. And obviously, they came back with the bench. But again, still, we'd like to think that Argentina should be able to just put teams like Scotland away. And then, obviously, we saw on the weekend, just gone, that game at Twickenham, England were cruising up until half-time. And then Argentina bounced back with an awesome second-half performance. So, look, overall, a real mixed bag. They had spells where they looked unplayable, but they still let teams score. So that defensive effort, they need a lot of work. But there's a lot of talent there. So we're going to put them straight in at playoff contenders. Next up, we have the 11 in a row, the undefeated team of the autumn, England, who this November were fantastic. They played a great kicking style that suited the players they've got. We saw the likes of Roebuck in the air and Freeman, Stewart looking outrageous. George Ford was showing everyone that he is still world class and deserves to be England's number 10, especially going into the Six Nations and even the World Cup next year. Up front, we got loads more players capped. We saw Guy Pepper start the games and actually add balance to that back row. Ben Earl got mad at a match in a couple, and we saw the dominant performance across the board. So, by far, the first team to go into our Grand Slammers, England. Over to everyone's second favourite team, Fiji. An interesting tour, to say the least. A losing effort against England, but at spells, they look good. We saw them go over to France, and at times, again, we saw the power and the pace, but again, another defeat against a Tier 1 team. And then against Spain, although they rotated, they let Spain get a lot of the ball and a lot of chances, and Spain were winning for a lot of that match. So a lot to work on for Fiji. They have clearly gotten better, but the results still need to follow up with that. And again, now they're going to be in that Nations Championship. They're going to be playing against Tier 1 teams all the time rather than just the Pacific Nations Cup, which again, we've seen the last couple of years, they just dominated. So we're going to go TMO check. There's a lot of work still to be done for them. Hopefully, as I said yesterday, the Drua playing another season in Super Rugby will be good for that national team to keep on developing. Before the start of this autumn campaign, we didn't really know where France were at. Obviously, they rotated a lot when they played against New Zealand over there in July. They've got a lot of talent, there's no doubt in that. But they started really slow against South Africa, and we saw them get better against Fiji. And obviously, yes, they defeated Wallabies, but on the back of a pretty long season, as we discussed for the Wallabies, we'd expect France to be putting them to bed. Clearly, the talent of Bielberry, Deportier, Ramos, they've got so many good players there. Top 14 is such a great league. We know they're going to welcome back DuPont for the Six Nations, but realistically, we expected them to push on a little bit more. So we don't doubt that they'll be there or thereabouts come the Six Nations, but we're going to put them in playoff contenders. So between all of the All Things Rugby editors, we've been going back and forward about Ireland over the last 4 weeks. A real interesting mixed bag of results. They started off in Chicago. There was the red card drama. They didn't really put on a good display. They rotated against Japan. Again, they won quite comfortably, but again, we expected way more from them. They then obviously had the big one against Australia for them, and they got to win that. But again, it wasn't their best performance. And then finally, we saw what happened on the weekend where they just had every yellow card and got beat up at every scrum. So it's only appropriate that the lack of discipline they showed and the way they buckled under pressure a lot, Ireland are going in the sin winners category. It's a weird one for Italy, as we haven't seen them win in a long time, since the beginning of the Six Nations, when they beat a very, very poor Welsh side. So we didn't know what we'd be getting, but they started so well against Australia and obviously got an amazing win that just killed all the Wallaby fans. At times against South Africa, they looked okay. We know they have a very strong back row, and that back line, when it fires, can be as good as anyone. But then this weekend's against Chile, they probably let Chile in more than they would have wanted and more than we expected, to be honest. So look, there's a lot to learn there. We want to see the likes of Zebra and Benetton do well in Europe to keep these Italians getting these big games, the knockout games in Europe, play in games that matter, and then hopefully into the Six Nations. We already know that they're probably going to beat this Welsh side. At the moment, it looks like they can probably take on Scotland pretty well as well, but there's still a lot to learn there for the Italian sides. And again, we saw even the 23 World Cup, when they come up against the bigger nations, they just got their asses handed to them. So overall, good campaign. We're going to still put them in sin bin, as though a lot of work to be done for the Italians. Let's move on to Eddie Jones's Japan side. Now, they've played a lot of rugby recently. So in July, they played double test matches against Wales. They obviously went on to the Pacific Nations Cup. They played Australia on the way over to Europe as well. Then they had their matches. And look, the tour wasn't fantastic for them. Obviously, they lost against Australia in that starting side. They then played a game against the Box at Wembley where, they were second best across the park. We saw them lose in the last minutes of Wales. And again, that's the game they probably should have won. And then against Georgia last week, they reverse it and they get the score in the last minute. But Georgia had chances to win that as well. So a lot of learning for that Japanese side. He's got such a young team. He pulled players out of university to play. So on one point, you have to give them credit. They're just so far off. And next year, going into the Nations Championship, you've got to probably guess they're going to be bottom of their pool when they do play against these Northern Hemisphere teams. They're going to really struggle. So look, unfortunately for Eddie, there's a lot to learn still with his team, and I just don't think they're going to be anywhere near capable, even come the 27 World Cup. So, Eddie Jones, back to the sheds you go. The mighty All Blacks and Razors men on their Grand Slam tour of the Northern Hemisphere. Now, there was a lot said about this Grand Slam, and apparently it was harder than them to win that than anything else. Not really, and to be honest with you, a little bit underwhelming as well, considering that up until that last week, they actually played near enough the same team, bar a few injuries, right? And if it wasn't for DMAC coming off the bench in a couple of games, like saving them, it was a pretty lackluster tour. The Chicago game was very underwhelming. Ireland obviously got that early red card. They had chances to win it as well. New Zealand got the win, and you're thinking, okay, look, there's a lot of trouble involved. Let's see what happens next. They go to Murrayfield, they play Scotland, and obviously we saw what happened. Scotland had every chance to win that game. And yes, DMAC come on, and he had the 50-22. He scored the amazing try in the corner, and then he hit that awesome penalty to win the game. But again, it was really kind of underwhelming. They then went to Twickenham, where England absolutely handed it to them. And obviously that's great play for England, but New Zealand did not look fantastic. And again, against Wales, yes, they won and they rotated, but they still conceded 4 tries to this Welsh side. So yeah, not a fantastic tour overall. I know they come away with 3 wins and, these results that matter at the top table, but I just don't think that this All Blacks side have got the same aura they used to have, Like, I don't think teams go into playing the All Blacks now and go, oh, we're scared to face the Haka. We don't think we can score points. Actually, look what England did. England fronted up and just battered them. So, yeah, lots of questions to be asked by Razor. More changes in his coaching staff as well. TMO check, New Zealand. I feel like all I do at the moment is talk smack about Scotland. And I listened to Gregor Townsend the other day say that outside of a little 10-minute patch over the 4 games, Scotland had a good tour. I don't agree. I think that USA game to start the tour was a waste of mine, theirs, USA's and everyone else's time. I think the game against Tonga, obviously it had a red card and 3 yellow cards. I think that was a waste of time. So you're then looking at the 2 games in the middle, which they lost both. They should have won against New Zealand, and they just didn't have the minerals to take it to that next level. And against Argentina, man, they just fumbled the bag so much. So, yeah, look, for me, lots of work to be done. I said it in a previous video. I don't know whether it's a Gregor issue with the whole thing with Newcastle. I don't know if Edinburgh need more support and you're just basically relying on Glasgow. But a pretty poor tour all around for me for Scotland. So back to the shed you go, lads. What's there to say about South Africa that I haven't already said in every single video over the last 4 weeks? Whether they have 14 men, 13 men, whether they play against 12 men, whether he starts a banging front row, whether he puts the youngsters out, whether he plays Sasha, whether he plays Pollard, it doesn't matter. They're the best team in the world. They've got the most depth in the world. They've got the most unbelievable scrum in the world. They've got the best coach in the world. They are the all-time Grand Slammers. If we had another tier, we'd put them there. But yeah, box all the way. We have our friends over in Wales. Now, a lot has happened over the last couple of years with the Welsh side, with the Welsh regions, a change in coach, Dragons not performing last year, Scarlets at the bottom of the URC this year. Do we go to 3 regions? Do we go to 2 regions? They lose over in Japan and they win over in Japan. They had this big old defeated record. Interesting tour. They scored more points in some of the games than they've ever done before. They scored 4 tries against Argentina. They scored 4 tries against the All Blacks. They beat Japan with the last kick of the game. So is that a success? In the current state of Welsh rugby, yes, you have to say that's a win. And you have to take these wins when you are in that position. You know, they were almost on the cusp of getting knocked out the top 12 in the rankings as well. But still so much work to be done. And again, you know, in the next year, they're going to be playing all of the rugby championship sides, Japan again, and Fiji. Realistically, they're going to be eyeing up that Japan game. And we've seen what's happened against Fiji in the last couple of World Cups. So, yeah, look, lots of work to be done. But some positives, I guess. TMO check for the Welsh. Oh, Australia, I really wish I can continue to make excuses for you, but we can't talk about the 27 World Cup at the moment. We have to talk about this tour in isolation. And outside of that first Japan game, it was just a bit of a shit show. Schmidt's selections was really questionable. We didn't really see a lot of good rugby played. They got absolutely battered in Twickenham, losing against Italy. And then as much as they tried against France, they just came up second best. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. A lot of rest and recovery, don't get me wrong. But yeah, unfortunately, Wallabies, back to the sheds you go. So that's how we rank the top 12 teams in the world. Let us know your thoughts and drop them in the comments below. Once again, thank you for watching. My name's Shanair, and this has been All Things Rugby.